Good evening, Patriot Nation. Today is January the 18th, and I am back from being banned by YouTube from posting content on this channel. Very frustrating to say the least. I have tried to be very careful on what I say and what I present on this channel to try to comply with the draconian rules and regulations that YouTube has leveraged on everybody that has a center or right of center message. And so on my January 6th video, I was very careful to include the direct news article and read directly from the article anything that the Moderna CEO had to say. And I also had the VAR's website live on the video as we were going through the information presented from VAR's official information direct from the CDC. Unfortunately, apparently that wasn't good enough, and the fact that I even had a disclaimer up saying that anything beyond the information directly from those sites was only my opinion and was not intended to be advice to anyone about anything. It was simply my opinion and how I felt about the official information from the official sources. Unfortunately, that was not good enough for YouTube, and they removed the video and gave this channel its second strike. So, for the next 3 months, basically until April, I cannot be posting anything about any of the information that YouTube has embargoed anybody from talking about, unless, of course, you're a left-wing whack job. Then you can talk about any of this stuff and say anything that you want. But unfortunately, being a center to right of center person, I am not allowed to discuss any of those topics. So I'm going to have to make some changes going forward. The first change that I am going to be making is that after this video, I am going to be posting only to my backup channel here on YouTube. So please take a minute. The link to that backup channel is down in the description of this video. Please pause this video, click on that link, head over to my backup channel, subscribe to that backup channel, hit that notifications button so that you're notified when I am posting videos, and I'm going to be posting videos to that channel going forward during this time of uncertainty with the strikes on this channel. Also, while you're at it, please hit the links that are also down in the description below and go over to my Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon channels. Make sure that you subscribe to those channels and hit the notifications on them so that you know when I'm posting links over there. In case this channel gets deleted by YouTube and in case the backup channel gets deleted by YouTube, I will be over on those platforms. I am also going to be working over the next 3 months to learn more about how Rumble does its algorithms and how to drive traffic and get subscribers and get views and all of that kind of stuff. Because unfortunately, with Rumble being a new platform and not having the user base that YouTube does, the amount of tools and information about how all of that stuff works and to aid in those tasks is much less than it is here on YouTube. But unfortunately, with the way that YouTube continues to censor and suppress any message that is center or right of center, this is just not a viable place for me to be taking the time and effort to create these videos only to have them removed, only to have them blocked by the analytics, and trying to get subscribers only to have this channel possibly deleted is just too frustrating. I have limited time to devote to this, and all of those things are very big hindrances to being able to get the message out there. So my eventual goal is going to be to not post content here on YouTube anymore and instead focus on those other platforms. With that being said, I am going to be having 2 subscriber contests that are going to be held on those other platforms. I will be having a 500 subscriber contest, and I will be having a 1,000 subscriber contest. All you have to do to be entered into those contests is to hit the subscribe button on those channels, and you will be entered into the drawing. I will have more information on those contests coming up. Because of the way that YouTube treats its content creators that offer a center to right of center or even conservative message, I will not be conducting any of those contests on YouTube, which is a change from what I had originally planned, but I'm just not willing to put any more time or effort into growing this channel because they have made it very clear that they're going to do everything in their power to make it as hard or maybe even impossible to try to maintain this channel or to even keep the channel from not getting deleted. So please make sure to get those other channels subscribed to, and you will be entered into that contest. Now, for tonight's video, I'm going to be talking about the new concrete wall that is being put up around the White House, how China is continuing to stockpile massive amounts of food, and how the Commie Joe administration is now going into overdrive in their efforts to label anyone that disagrees and speaks out against them as domestic terrorists, and what all of that and the situation over in the Ukraine and with China could actually mean to all of us going forward. This is Patriot Nation. I apologize if I sound a little scattered tonight. This is the 3rd time that I am recording this video. I've been having some audio issues with it cutting in and out. And then, of course, the frustration with trying to create content that meets the censorship rules and regulations on Facebook, on YouTube, has been very frustrating, and it makes it a little bit hard for me to focus on things a bit. But we're going to get through this tonight, and hopefully going forward, especially once I'm able to make the move to one of the alternative platforms as my primary platform, we should have a lot less frustration and a lot less lack of focus on the show. So first up tonight, there continues to be information of China stockpiling large amounts of food. Now, this is something that they have been doing for the last couple of years. And when you look at the current state of the world and our supplies of things, this should not really be surprising, but it should be a little troubling, because when you look at what exactly this means is that they are holding 69% of the world's corn reserves, 60% of rice, and 51% of wheat. And when you look at other sources here, we've got less than 20% of the world's population has managed to stockpile more than half of the globe's maize and other grain. I know they've been stockpiling a lot of other stuff as well. It's the historically high level that they have been doing this at. And you can kind of see here that they have been upping consistently, and especially starting in 2016. We've seen some very good spikes in through here with maize, some really big spikes that have started back. It looks like in about 14 or 15 on rice. They've started to kind of level that off a little bit, but we started to see a huge spike in, soybeans, and then also a pretty consistent spike in wheat. So they are spending $98.1 billion importing food in 2020. That's up 4.6 times from a decade earlier. The thing that concerns me about this, ladies and gentlemen, is that the world is a very unstable place right now. And when you have a country like China that is, at least in part, responsible for a lot of that instability, they have taken a very aggressive stance with Taiwan. They've been taking a very aggressive stance, with other economic measures throughout this planet. They are becoming more and more involved in geopolitics or building up their military. Many people think that they are, responsible for the reason that we all have to, get this stuff. And now the fact that they are stockpiling these huge amounts of food only leads to more and more concern as to why that is taking place, and if this is all part of a bigger plan someplace that they have been doing this for a while now. When you're spending that kind of money and you're hoarding that large of quantities of stuff, it just doesn't seem reasonable that they're doing it just in case. This seems like something that has been planned out for a while, and it seems that when you take into account all of the other information that we've been hearing over the last couple of years of all of the supply chain interruptions and food supply interruptions and a number of other things that we as Patriots have been following for the last couple of years, it only adds to that concern. And for me, it's another one of those dots that when you throw into the mix and you start connecting those dots, it adds to one more sign that there is something bigger taking place that a lot of us aren't privileged enough to see. One more of those things is over the last, few months, you have had the Commie Joe administration going above and beyond in coordination with the communist propaganda networks to label more and more Americans, including parents, as domestic terrorists. And yet at the same time, they're not labeling Antifa or BLM or any other actual violent extremist groups that have rioted and looted and burned entire city blocks to the ground and have killed and hospitalized dozens of people over the last few years. They're not being labeled as terrorists, but yet the Department of Injustice is launching this new domestic terrorism division. And if you look at a lot of the videos and a lot of the information on this whole domestic terrorist things, they're talking about groups that are patriots, they're talking about Trump supporters, they're talking about conservatives, they're talking about anybody that is against the tyrannical actions of this administration. They're talking about anybody that is pro-America. They're talking about anyone that is anti-government, anti-big government, anybody that has concerns about all of these unconstitutional actions that the government is taking. Those are all of the people that are being considered domestic terrorists. Mark Levin puts it out pretty plainly that any of their political opponents are going to be labeled as domestic terrorists in the way that they are framing things in here. And they're pretty much lumping everybody that supports Trump or everybody that considers himself a conservative as a neo-Nazi or a white supremacist. And now they are putting in a lot of effort into the whole guise that, white supremacy is, really the biggest threat, and domestic terrorism is the biggest threat. And, they were kind of doing this kind of on the down low for a while. It was kind of offhanded comments. But now you actually have, a big concerted effort to make sure that this is brought forefront. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. And when you're seeing articles like this of how they're mainstreaming this narrative and that the real danger, to the country isn't the totalitarian actions of this administration, but it's actual people that love America and anybody that wants to stand up, to critical race theory being taught to their kids, anybody that's upset that their daughter was raped in school and the school tried to cover it up, anybody that's, upset over all of these unconstitutional mandates that are being forced upon kids or forced upon workers. Those are the people that this administration is labeling as domestic terrorists. And that really should scare everybody, because the reality of things is that the people that would be considered patriots or the people that are considered pro-America are the majority of people in this country. And so when you see information about this, it's really scary. And Tucker Carlson, will put the video up, up here. Tucker has a really great video, a really great monologue on exactly this subject. So let's take a look at that.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight there was a lot going on right around the time of the last presidential inauguration. So you may have missed that on his very first day as president, Joe Biden ordered federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies to prepare a review of how the administration should fight terrorism. By last June, that report was complete. It concluded that after more than 20 years, Islamic terror is no longer the greatest threat to this country. Instead, the agencies declared that domestic political extremism is, quote, the most urgent terrorism threat the United States faces today. That's a very stark assessment. So you have to ask, who exactly are these terrorists who threaten us so urgently? And they're not who you might expect. The report did not even mention the BLM riots, the deadly BLM riots that had just taken place. There wasn't a word about Antifa. There was nothing about the gunmen who murdered 800 Americans in the city of Chicago last year, many of them children. No, they weren't there. Instead, the Biden administration declared that the, quote, most lethal elements of today's domestic terror threat are political conservatives. They're people who disagree with Joe Biden. Now, that report was released almost exactly 6 months ago this Friday. It received relatively little attention and hasn't since. And no major news organization even asked the most obvious question. These terrorists who threaten us, where are they? If Trump voters are really the most, quote, lethal threat that our country faces today, where are all the people they've killed? That's not an easy question to answer. Just look at the numbers, which are fairly tidily kept. Take a look at all the Americans who died by violence over the past 12 months, and there are many, thousands and thousands of Americans. I'm going to ask a simple question. How many of them were killed by right-wingers for political reasons? Not many. Or since we're talking about threats here, pose the question another way. Are you more in danger walking through a neighborhood that votes 90% Democrat or a neighborhood that votes 90% Republican? Come on. This claim is ridiculous. On its face, there is no substantial right-wing terror threat in this country, certainly not in relative terms. There just isn't. And no one's shown there is. The White House knows this, of course. They can read the numbers as well as anyone else can. So they're working hard to create the illusion of that threat. Much hangs on their ability to do that. You may remember the story this fall about a group called the National School Boards Association, which sent a letter to the feds asking the DOJ to take a look at parents who don't like their kids' curriculums. Well, the Justice Department responded immediately to that letter. Talk about customer service. Days later, the Attorney General announced the FBI would investigate moms who dared to complain at school board meetings as potential terrorists. Many people were shocked by this story, but we just learned it's worse even than we thought it was. A new Freedom of Information Act request has revealed that the National School Boards Association asked the feds to investigate parents because the feds asked them to ask the feds to investigate parents. See how that works? Apparently, the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, told school board administrators to write their letter to the White House. The White House then used that letter as a pretext to begin a crackdown on parents. See how that works? The snake eating its tail. When you don't have enough domestic terrorists to justify a political purge, then you just go ahead and create them. And that's exactly what they've been doing. This week, the campaign against this new American al-Qaeda entered a new and very ominous phase. Again, little noticed by the national media. This Tuesday, 2 days ago, the DOJ announced the creation of a new domestic terrorism unit. What will it do? Well, it will target, quote, anti-authority ideologues. Anti-authority ideologues. Now, keep in mind, this country was founded by people who are anti-authority ideologues. That's why they created America and baked the idea of opposing authority, so it doesn't get too big and take over your life, into our founding documents. These ideas are central to the American idea. In fact, they are the American idea. But in this administration, they are now crimes. Here's Matt Olson, the Assistant Attorney General, explaining.
We face an elevated threat from domestic violent extremists. That is, individuals in the United States who seek to commit violent criminal acts in furtherance of domestic, social, or political goals. Domestic violent extremists are often motivated by a mix of ideologies and personal grievances. We've seen a growing threat from those who are motivated by racial animus, as well as those who ascribe to extremist, anti-government, and anti-authority ideologies. I've decided to establish a domestic terrorism unit to augment our existing approach. This group of dedicated attorneys will focus on the domestic terrorism threat.
Who's the threat to the country? That guy is the threat to the country, and the people working for him and those propping him up, and the people spreading the core lie here, which is that American citizens who distrust the government or don't like its policies are terrorists. Just today on MSNBC, Jason Johnson, one of its contributors, described the entire Republican Party as a terrorist organization. So you can see where this is going. Again, and we're quoting now, this is the Assistant Attorney General, we have seen a growing threat from those who subscribe to anti-government and anti-authority ideologies. Really, is that threat growing? Is it true? Let's see here. That threat is being used to justify the creation of this agency, but it's not rooted in reality. 27 years ago, back in 1995, you'll remember, 168 people were murdered in the Oklahoma City bombing. Another 700 were injured. Now, the investigation into what happened that day involved nearly 30,000 interviews. Investigators gathered 7,000 pounds of evidence. We could go on. It was an enormous investigation. Attorney General Merrick Garland, by the way, was part of it at the time. Here's the point. Despite the size of that investigation, no one suggested, even hinted, that we might need to create a new domestic terror division within the DOJ to handle the problem. No. The whole thing was handled by FBI field offices, as things like this had been for many decades. The FBI field offices did their jobs. The man accused of doing it got the death penalty, and you may have noticed it didn't happen again. And then Joe Biden became president, and the number of so-called domestic terror investigations more than doubled. So the question is, what exactly are they investigating? If there's no substantial death toll from these terrorists in our midst, what exactly are the feds looking into? Well, they're taking a close look at crimes like the plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a plot that helped her political fortunes considerably. What did it consist of? Well, that conspiracy, in the end, turned out to have more FBI agents and informants involved than would-be kidnappers. The guy the Fed said were running it turned out to be homeless. He was living in the basement of a vacuum repair shop. His friends called him Captain Autism, and they called him that for a reason. He wasn't the ringleader of anything. He couldn't have been. The whole thing was ridiculous. But it stoked the storyline that was politically expedient, and so the media uncritically promoted it again and again, as if it were real. The media's job, by the way, to remind you, is to push back against government statements to find out if they're actually true. Because it turns out politicians may say things for political reasons, and it's the media's job to discern truth from spin. The media's job is not to act as spokesmen for the people in power. And yet that's what they're doing. Now the DOJ, in case you haven't noticed, has decided that the January 6th protesters are the real terrorists. They're the insurrectionists you keep hearing about. And yet, weirdly, as of just 2 days ago, not one American citizen had actually been charged by the federal government with insurrecting. Watch them admit that.
Has anyone been charged with the crime of insurrection following January 6th?
I am not aware that anyone has been charged with that particular offense, even if it is an offense. I just am not aware of that.
Oops. They can't actually be insurrectionists if no one has committed insurrection. That's pretty embarrassing. Apparently, the DOJ finally realized how embarrassing it was. So about 48 hours after the testimony you just saw, and more than a year after January 6th, today the feds announced that they will charge someone with sedition after all. Now, if you've got any questions about the timing of these charges or the merit of the sedition case that the DOJ just announced, the Biden administration would like to remind you to keep those questions to yourself. And just to make certain you do keep them to yourself or are unable to share them with anyone else, today Joe Biden also announced a crackdown on the news media. As he put it, a crackdown on anyone who spreads, quote, disinformation and misinformation about his government. Watch.
If you haven't gotten vaccinated, do it. Personal choice impacts us all, our hospitals, our countries. I make a special appeal to social media companies and media outlets. Please deal with the misinformation and disinformation that's on your shows. It has to stop.
The misinformation that's on your shows. Yeah. Message received. It has to stop, Joe Biden says. So that means that big tech and media organizations have to do what he says, just like his vax mandate, found unconstitutional today, by the way. It'll still be enforced because big businesses rely on the government to exist. They take government money. They are regulated from the very top to the very bottom by the government. So it takes a lot to defy the president of the United States. If he tells you to do something, you'd better do it. What Joe Biden is telling media companies to do today is to censor their content so it doesn't contradict his decrees. Now, CNN has no problem with this. In fact, they made fun of what Joe Biden said today. They made fun of his call for censorship, not because it's obviously unconstitutional, which it is, but because it wasn't quite fascist enough. One of those weird-looking media reporters over at CNN wrote this, quote, "I'm sure the Murdochs will get right on this now that this special appeal has been made, exclamation point." So they understand exactly what's going on here. Joe Biden is targeting Fox News for censorship. His call for censorship, by the way, comes after hundreds of doctors and scientists called on Spotify to adopt a misinformation policy that would shut down Joe Rogan's podcast. Rogan recovered from COVID without the vax, and they hate him for it. So it's not just the government, of course, it's people acting on behalf of the government calling for the same thing, which is censorship of political opinions. What you're seeing here is dangerous. There's no other way to describe it. Far more dangerous than domestic terror threat they've been bloviating about for the last 3 days. It contravenes the First Amendment. Under the First Amendment, the government cannot coordinate with private actors to censor free speech, period. The Supreme Court has made that very clear over centuries. And yet that's exactly what's happening. Joe Biden did it today. Care to complain about that? Probably not. You may have noticed what happens to people who complain too much. Roger Stone, for example, complained an awful lot about the government. He did it loudly, often. He did it for years. And the DOJ didn't like it. So in the end, they accused Roger Stone on the basis of zero evidence whatsoever of colluding with Russia. In the end, they charged him with lying to Congress, something that happens literally every day of the year. But in his case, they made it a felony, threatened to send him to prison for the rest of his life. But in the meantime, they sent a helicopter, a boat, and armed paramilitaries to his home at dawn after coordinating the raid with CNN. Really one of the darkest moments in civil liberties in recent history. We still have the tape. Let's watch it again.
Exclusive footage you're looking at right now from CNN as the FBI arrives at Roger Stone's residence in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, taking him into custody. They arrived before dawn there, before 6 a.m. or just after 6 a.m. A dozen officers were told.
So they coordinate with CNN just to make sure it's all preserved on tape to send the message to everybody else for the encouragement of the others, as the French used to say. And then they send guys with automatic weapons to your house to shut you up, to destroy you. Now, the people who ordered that raid should have been brought up on charges themselves, but they weren't. They're promoted. And now, thanks to Joe Biden, they have more power to harass their political enemies. Do you feel safer?
And on top of everybody now being labeled as domestic terrorists, and this is going to be another one of those very gray areas, much like a lot of the community standards on social media these days. They purposely make it very vague so that they can lump into the people that they want to lump into this thing. You now have reports of the Commie Joe Administration building an 8 to 10 foot concrete wall around the White House. And this article here is from American Military News. Concrete wall is being erected around Biden's White House without any explanation. There's videos and pictures of this that are circling the internet. And we're actually going to have a couple of those videos from Nancy Drew, who was at the White House and got up as close as you possibly can to the White House these days to get video of this. And one of the interesting things to me in this video is that you now have multiple barriers around a lot of the government section of DC. You know, originally we had at the White House, for instance, you know, you had the I don't know if it's steel or wrought iron fence that's been up there for decades. And then several years ago, they made it even taller. And then after January 6th, they went across the street and they put up these, whatever they are, 3 foot. They basically look like bike racks that they, you know, hook together in like these squares that are, I don't know, 6 or 8 foot squares. So now you can't even cross the street. You got this new barrier that they've put up with these panels. And then you have I'm just gonna call it the wrought iron fence that's always been there. And then they put in a bunch of concrete barriers like you would see like as highway dividers and then they took them down, and then they put them back up, and then now they're building this, 8 or 10 foot high concrete wall. Let's just watch the video first from Nancy Drew, and we'll you can see exactly what I'm talking about.
Some walls, like some concrete barriers with walls on them going in to the gate of the property itself. Oh. Huh. All right. Go peek. Oh no. It's going right up front. What in the world? Is that like gonna go in the front? Oh, brother. Dang, he's just lifting that thing right off of there. He was ready to go. Dang. That is what that man needs a raise. Where is it? Okay.
Jump!
Well, ain't this an interesting sight today? I have not gone on to see if the live cam is on. Is the live cam on? Yeah, they got some serious building materials there too. Whoa. Okay, so I can take a wild guess here. I'm not a master pipe fitter or anything like that, but pretty sure they don't need a wall to fix a broken pipe, right? That's what I would think, at least. It's a little much. And oh, I see. They brought that stuff. See what he's... Okay, so see the stuff on the ground there? That's what they took off of that truck earlier that looked like walls. They put it on the ground to save the grass. Okay, so he can just trackle right on up it and not destroy the lawn. Brilliant. Nancy Drew learned something new today. So you can see where they have it all outlined with plywood all the way around. Maybe oh gosh. I wonder if they're going to dig here, to be honest with you. I hope not. I hope I've seen all the digging in this city. Trust me, I have seen enough. As amazing as this journey has been, I will never be the same person that I was. And I'm kind of, honestly, and now that I'm starting to think about it, I'm going to start crying. I'm kind of afraid when it's all over and everything really hits me. Because I know that I have been given an incredible ability to disassociate. Otherwise, this mom would not be here this long. I can guarantee you that. I would have probably pulled the trigger, to be honest with you. Kind of afraid of that moment. But God has me. He'll get me through it. Very interesting. The live cam is on, so people can actually see this taking place. Okay, it's interesting. Glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. You know, and now I would like to know that other people are going on that live cam and checking it out, other than, you know, and asking questions. All right. Okay, so, I find that so fascinating. He's so good at that. Oops, sorry, guys. All right, guys, well... Alright. Ugh. I don't know. I just feel yuck. So, anyhow. We're just talking about all that. Alright, guys. I'm going to go ahead and shut down. I'm going to go ahead and head home for the day. I guess we'll find out soon enough in the morning what this looks like. I'll be back up early in the morning, and, you know, it takes me an hour, 10 minutes to get home. So, I'm not gonna... hang out here much longer. It's cold. All right, guys. So I'll see you later. I love y'all. All right. So they have us blocked out again, which I really don't understand why they need to have us blocked out. You know, I really don't understand that. Let me show you down here. We do have that fine young man down at the door. Thank you, young man, for your service. Right now on the schedule, it says that the president and the vice president are receiving their daily briefing. That was to begin at, I believe, 11:15. I don't know if that's still taking place, but we do have this gentleman at the door. Things are fairly quiet here this morning. Really nothing to speak of, except a little bit over at the Capitol. All right, so let's take a walk and look. All right, so there's the thing around the door. I honestly am not sure what that is. Could it be a shelter for the guards at the door? I don't know. Like I said in my video yesterday, and I'll try to get a better look at it, but this seems to be the best angle, that if there was a need to put metal detectors in there, I would have thought, okay, so it does have glass doors on the outside. So that is, okay, so they just opened it. I couldn't tell this whole time if it was plastic, like a thick plastic, but it does appear that it is a glass and metal doorway, entranceway. So, but if there was a need to put metal detectors in here, I would have thought that would have taken place a very, very long time ago. Things have been happening at this White House for a very long time, and I've been watching them. So that's just my thoughts on that. But I honestly don't know what that is. My guess would be a shelter from the terrible weather we've had. And let me tell you, it's been freezing cold here. Freezing cold. Then you add the wind, then you add the snow and the ice, and it's pretty miserable. All right, it does appear that we have a box truck up there, and unfortunately I can't see crap because of the wall. So I have no idea what's up there. We have this little section here in the front with a silt fence around it. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to see anything because I can't go any closer. So I question why this is still blocked off. You know, what's the big deal? But there just may be one. All right, so here's something I wanted to talk about. So, you know, when I'm not here on the weekends, I do try to watch the live cam as much as possible in case things happen that may, you know, lead me in a different direction the next day that I come. So Sunday, it was terrible weather here. It was snowing and it was ice and it was white out and it was just really, really bad. So I didn't come. But I spent a lot of time watching the live cam, okay? And what I noticed, and I did take some screenshots, and those of you that have been following me for a long time know that I watch the windows. I watch the windows. So these windows, all right, let me come down here and maybe give you a better shot. All right. These windows have like a blind, okay? And they're like a mint green color, okay? Or it's like a paper color. It appears on this side with my little eyes to be a mint green. And you can see more on that window there because that's like my window, you know? Okay, so they are like a mint green in color and they are fairly thick, you can tell, okay? So they're not like a sheer curtain or anything like that. So on Sunday, as I was watching, I noticed that they had most of these. Hi, baby. Have a good day. Be safe. So what I noticed was the blinds, okay, and how they were. And most of them were at least mostly closed. And I took some screenshots and during the whiteout, and I can go back and repost. All right, so as I was watching, yes, I did see those yellow lights. And honestly, my first reaction was it could be the salt trucks because let me show you, 8th Street is literally right there. It's like not even a block, okay? And the roads were treacherous. So that really was my initial thought, that it was a salt truck, okay? And you would not be able to see it maybe on the bottom windows because when you get out to the road, it's at a different level and that wall would have prevented that from happening. Okay, so, but what I didn't take into consideration was that I should be able to see it, and Phil made a very good point, on the outside of the building. So then I had all these people sending me that I guess it was a screen recording of the live cam of those crazy lights or flashes, okay? And so I went back and I studied. Okay, so, but here's the thing, in that video, and I don't know where that video originated. I'm not arguing the video by any means, but I want to point out something. I had watched the blinds from Sunday during the day until Monday, okay, in the morning before I came, and they were all still at the same level, so mostly closed, okay? All right, so had something have happened on the inside of the White House, I'm not sure how we would be able to see that as clearly as that was through those blinds, okay? Because they're pretty solid. So even at night, when they're closed and they got lights on, you can see like a figure in the back, but you can't really make out what that is. You know, so it's not like a clear thing. So if something took place within the house itself, I'm not sure we would have been able to see it that clearly on the outside of the blinds on the windows. Okay, that's just my thoughts. Now, could something potentially have happened on the outside? Okay, I don't know. But I did go back and watch that over and over and over. The blinds are, and go back and watch the video. The blinds are closed. So how would we be able to see those flickering lights? Let's just call them that for now, as we don't know what they are. How would we be able to see them as clearly as we did on the outside of the windows, on the outside of those blinds? That's just my question. And you know me, I'm completely open-minded to everything because I have no freaking clue what's going on here, guys. Do I think I know? Yeah, but I mean, I don't have any confirmation whatsoever. So I am always open to, well, this makes sense or that makes sense, and I will consider everything. So if somebody can bring something to me that maybe, goes against what I just said, please do, because, I'm just as baffled as everybody else. But those are my thoughts, okay, that we just wouldn't be able to see that as clearly through those. So it's thick curtains. They're pretty thick. So anyhow, enough of that. It's very quiet. Flags all full staff here. All of the buildings, very, very quiet, except for what's going on over at the Capitol. Nice, sweet baby. Good morning. All right, so I'm in a little bit of pain today, actually a lot, and my joints are pretty stiff, so this cold is not helping. So if nothing goes on at the Capitol, this girl's gonna head on home because I need to maintain right now. So okay, guys, so I guess that's it for now, and I'll see you soon.
So what exactly is the Commie Joe administration scared of? Russia? China? Or are they scared of American citizens? Why else should you be putting up a concrete wall? Why else should you have all these barriers around the White House and other parts of D.C.? Those aren't things that are going to stop military personnel from getting by. All of those things are things that are designed to keep average American citizens out of there. I'm really afraid that there is some bigger thing in play when you take a look at everything that's going on or has been going on. For all of you out there that follow Monkey Works, you probably already know this and probably seen the videos that Monkey has done on it. If not, I encourage you to head over to his channel after this video and watch the videos of him talking about this stuff. But for the last months, there have been huge amounts of air refuelers flying around, especially the East Coast. I mean, I took a look earlier today and filtered out the air traffic to just be the Stratotanker refuelers, and there were 30 of them up across the U.S. this morning. 30. There were a dozen or so just along the East Coast of this country. And just like Monkey said in his videos, when you have that many air refuelers up, you have a crap ton of fighters that are up. And there have been a crap ton of fighters flying cap over the East Coast of this country for months now. You've had a number of P-8 sub-hunters flying off, searching off the East Coast for months. You've had airborne surveillance aircraft flying up and down the East Coast for months. You've had the nuclear biological sniffer helicopter flying patterns and searching for something off several parts of the East Coast for months. So they're on high alert for something. Now, the question becomes, is it a foreign adversary? Is it a domestic? Is it just their part of some false flag event that they've got going on that they're planning for the coming weeks or the coming months? You know, I don't know. I mean, you could let your imagination roll on this. 5 years ago, the thoughts that are going through my mind now, I would have thought were just impossibilities, just crazy conspiracy that over what's gone on and what we know now from the last couple of years, unfortunately, a lot of that is becoming very possible. You've got hundreds. I think the last number that was shown was around 800 immigration camps, immigration processing facilities that have been built around this country. And the crazy conspiracy that comes to mind when I start thinking about this is that you have this huge influx, this problem of illegal immigration. You have the hundreds of thousands of refugees that have been brought in during the debacle of Afghanistan's withdrawal. And so we have the need for all of these facilities, these immigration facilities, these refugee facilities. So they go out, they build all of these camps because it's needed for this whole immigration and refugee issue. But think for a minute, if you have this plan and you need an excuse to build all these internment camps, what better excuse than you need it to process all these illegals that are coming in, and you need it to process and house these poor, suffering refugees that we've had to bring in from Afghanistan because it wasn't safe for them anymore. And so now they process all these people out, and now they have all these really awesome internment camps that have all the high fences and razor wire and beds and guard towers and everything needed to make perfect concentration camps to place all of us who refuse to go along with the communist bullcrap that this administration is pushing. Why else do you need 800 internment camps for? Why are you spending billions of dollars to create these things? Why do these things have multiple fence fence walls. You've got barbed wire or concertina wire at the top of these things. I mean, these things look like they were built as prisons. Why would you do that for refugees? Why would you do that for immigrants? Having one fence would be enough. But when you have multiple layers of fencing, like you do in an internment camp or in a prison, it leads me to believe that these things are being built for something other than what they're telling us. And all of us know that these guys are really good at the long con, and it's very likely that the smoke and mirrors that they're putting up and pushing through their mouthpiece of the communist propaganda networks isn't the reality of what this stuff is for. So it really bothers me that you're seeing all of this stuff taking place. And remember, sometime in February is when Trump's Truth network is supposed to be going live. And once that happens, it's all supposed to be independently hosted and connected and able to bypass all the censorship of the big tech networks. And therefore, a lot of the truth of information that is being hidden and being censored won't be able to be censored anymore. And so you look at the timing of how all this is taking place. You've got this influx of illegals and refugees that has led to the creation of these 800 or so internment camps, the increased censorship of conservatives on platforms owned by the communist propaganda supporters. You've got the very dangerous situation taking place over in the Ukraine. You've got China hoarding food. You've got supply chain issues. You've got food supply issues. You've got patriots and right of center Americans and parents that are now being labeled as domestic terrorists. Anybody that opposes this regime is being labeled as domestic terrorists. And they're processing all these immigrants. So all of these camps are going to be opening up with lots of free space for all these new domestic terrorists. I don't know. Again, 5-10 years ago, if I would have heard someone saying what I just said, I would have thought they were freaking crazy. But you look at what is being going on, you look at exactly what these people are saying, you look at all of the news that's coming out about the stuff that took place in November of 2020. And all of the protests that are taking place around the world and all the people that are fed up with the tyrannical governments in their countries around the world. And when we're at a tinderbox, ladies and gentlemen, there is a very, very, very well planned out effort taking place around this globe to destabilize this planet. And I just saw an article about now how the Federal Reserve in combination with the central bank is now pushing and talking about a digital U.S. currency based on the central bank. Again, all of you that are patriots that have been following this stuff know exactly what that is. You've got a lot of stuff that's distracting from the whole Ghislaine Maxwell stuff. You've got a lot of distractions taking place. And it bothers me that when you start to see the communist propaganda networks really starting to all kind of have this common message that is being pushed out very carefully about this stuff, and you're starting to see a lot of the recommendations from the health organizations changing, and a lot of countries changing the way that they're doing stuff. I just hope everybody that is out there is been listening to this stuff and been preparing for kind of the worst case scenario, because, you know, I'm one of those people that I like to always plan for the worst and hope for the best, so that if that worst case scenario does happen, that, you know, you aren't going to be caught off guard. I hope I'm completely wrong, and I hope that we never run into any sort of a worst case scenario. Heck, I don't even hope that we run into like some sort of like mid-grade scenario. But one of the things that I've learned, especially over the last couple of years with all these supply interruptions, is that we as Americans, and we that live in other first world countries that have really become spoiled by this whole just-in-time inventory model that we've had, we're very susceptible to having shortages of things. And if you start running out of food or power or fuel, that can have a very negative impact on your life, especially if you live in colder climates, especially if you don't have supplies to last you a few weeks or a couple of months. And if you do have the ability to be prepared for a couple weeks or a couple of months, it's not a waste, because the reality is that there's always a chance of some sort of natural disaster that's going to impact those things as well. And so it gives you that peace of mind, and it gives you the ability to not stress and panic about what could happen to you and your family should any sort of unforeseen event, natural or otherwise, happen. So I encourage you all to make sure that you're paying attention to things. Make sure you're checking as many sources as possible. I think the next few weeks have a very high probability of something taking place. I mean, just the stuff that's taking place over with Russia and Ukraine and China's involvement in that, and, you know, Commie Joe being a spineless, ballless pussy, it has put America in a very, very bad spot, and that has in turn put the world in a very bad spot. Add into all of the tyrannical crap that he's trying to pull within this country, it can be, you know, it's a tinderbox, and one little spark can set off a number of things. And so please keep your eyes open. Please try to prepare yourself for, you know, those worst case scenarios as much as you can in the next few days or few weeks. You know, stay frosty, stay safe, for God and country. Good night.